with the Pennsylvania Coalition Against Domestic Violence. Today, we're going to be talking about PCADV's Lethality Assessment Program, which you'll also hear us refer to as LAP. In 2021, 112 people lost their lives to domestic violence in Pennsylvania. Over the past 10 years, that number adds up to over 1,600 lives lost. Research conducted by the Maryland Network to End Domestic Violence and Dr. Jacqueline Campbell shows that only 4% of domestic violence homicide victims had contacted a hotline, shelter, or program prior to being killed by an intimate partner before implementing a program like LAP. PCADV began implementing the Lethality Assessment Program in 2012 to respond to these staggering statistics. 10 years later, the LAP program has grown from 9 domestic violence programs and 12 police departments to now 48 programs partnering with 436 police departments to better serve survivors in 51 counties across the Commonwealth. Our guests today have been doing the work on the ground to implement LAP program in their communities since the very beginning. Joining us today to talk about LAP from the Domestic Violence Center of Chester County, we have Dr. Dolly Wideman-Scott, CEO, and Ashley Folkman, LAP Program Coordinator. We also have with us Lieutenant Rodger Ollis with the Coatesville Police Department. Lieutenant Ollis not only manages his own department's LAP program, but also assists throughout his county and across the state with training other law enforcement officers in the program as well. So welcome to all of you, and thank you for taking the time today to join us and to talk about LAP on the 10-year anniversary of this program being started in Pennsylvania. So to get us started here, Ashley, could you tell us a little bit about LAP program, what it is, just kind of give us an overall sense of how LAP works.
Absolutely. So you touched a little bit already. So LAP was created by the Maryland Network Against Domestic Violence with conjunction of Dr. Jacqueline Campbell. And this is an evidence-based program. So this program has taken 11 high-risk factors and structured them into a questionnaire that law enforcement officers complete with identified victims when responding to an intimate partner violence 911 call. The screen is actually broken down into 2 sections. Now, section 1 is the top 3 highest lethality factors. And then the second section covers the other 8 high-risk lethality factors. And then based upon how an identified victim answers these questions, it will trigger either a non-high danger or a high danger response. Now, there is a little subsection within the screen that allows for an officer to indicate that is high danger based upon their beliefs. So what they're seeing while they're on scene, if they've interacted with these individuals in the past, they can go ahead and put that by their belief high danger response. If the screen does produce a high danger result, then it's a fast track with the identified victim and getting them connected with our agency and providing that identified victim with all agency services. The officer on scene will inform the identified victim that based on how they answered the questions on the LAP screen, that they are at a high risk for being killed by their intimate partner. And there's a reason that the officers state it that way. It's to make it very real and bring it to the attention of the identified victim who's already gone through a traumatic incident, which is why the officers are on scene. Then the officer kind of steps into an advocate role and supports that identified victim by calling into the Domestic Violence Center's hotline. The officer then gives the advocate who answers the hotline call the identified victim's information and informs the advocate of the questions that the victim has said yes to on the screen. The officer then gives that identified victim privacy to talk to the advocate so they can go over services and safety plan and work with that identified victim to get them, again, fast track connection with services. And the hope is to remove them from that high risk of lethality situation and environment.
Thanks so much for that explanation, Ashley. Lieutenant Ollis, do you have anything to add to that from the law enforcement's perspective, just to kind of give us the overview of the LAP and how that works from your end?
Well, that was fantastic. Pardon my voice, everybody. A great explanation of what occurs, right? It's been a game changer for us because for a number of years, we were a result, not necessarily an answer. We would go to the scene, separate them, make an arrest if we needed to, but we never really got into all the dynamics of the relationship. And with this process that takes 5 to 10 extra minutes, we have the ability to link a victim survivor to resources. And that is huge because as soon as what I have come to find out is the sooner they link to resources, the safer they become. So great explanation by Ashley in terms of our role. It gives us a chance to do much, much more than we used to be able to do.
Wonderful, thank you. Dr. Wideman-Scott, you and your program have been participating in LAP since the very beginning. Can you tell us a little bit about the origins of LAP? What was the idea for the program at the time when it got started?
It's really awesome and wonderful that Ashley and Lieutenant Ollis explained what we're doing today and its effectiveness. I can go down memory lane, and it was probably in 2010 when we received a notice from the Pennsylvania Coalition Against Domestic Violence urging us to participate in a conference call. At that time, we did not have the platforms that we have today, so it was a statewide conference call. And with their excitement, they wanted to inform all of the domestic violence program about this wonderful evidence-based program that would help us to save lives in our own communities by partnering with law enforcement and prosecution. So it really intrigued us to be a part of that original conversation. And then PCADV scheduled a in-person meeting in Harrisburg. And I had the wonderful opportunity to attend that in-person meeting. But prior to that, we were encouraged to get at least one law enforcement department from our county to attend that meeting as well, so that we can be really informed about the LAP program. And lo and behold, we were successful in getting representation from 2 law enforcement departments. The city of Coatesville, that Lieutenant Rodger Ollis is representing, and also someone from Oxford, the borough of Oxford, that representation came from that department as well. And so we were surrounded by many other advocates and police departments in the room, while we had the opportunity to receive a seminar from PCADV and Dave Sargent, who is a law enforcement officer from Maryland. And he spoke about the effectiveness of the LAP program and really encouraged all of us to consider our involvement with the implementation of LAP. The energy in the room was really, really amazing. We looked at ourselves and said, are we going to do this? And it was a no-brainer for the Coatesville law enforcement and Oxford law enforcement, that they both said, yes, we're on board. We will help with piloting the program in Chester County. We believe that it will definitely be a great tool that we can inform survivors about services from the Domestic Violence Center, and that the Domestic Violence Center can quickly inform them about our services. And if they are interested in coming to the shelter right away, that we would make sure that would happen, and we would begin to provide the services for survivors and their children immediately. Again, with the research from Dr. Jacqueline Campbell, they found that only 4% of victims who were killed by an intimate partner violence receive services from a domestic violence organization. And so we really wanted to prevent, to the best of our ability, from any lethalities occurring in Chester County. So we joined together and said that we're going to give this a try because we know that we have to implement and assess in order to see the effectiveness for ourselves. And again, it has been a really, really effective program, and you will hear more about it.
Thank you so much for sharing that history of the program. Lieutenant Ollis, your department was also one of those original participants. How did you and your department become involved in the beginning?
Well, I guess it was a phone call from Dolly, right? The center, as far as I can remember, I've been doing police work over 20 years, has always had a really good reputation. And, that comes from the leadership. And when Dolly calls, we do what she asks, right? For good reason. And I imagine the Coatesville Police Department was one of the selected pilot programs. It's because we're an urban center. And with that comes a large call volume. And unfortunately, many of those calls are domestic violence calls or disturbances. So we jumped at the opportunity, and I was thrust into the department coordinator role for lethality assessment. And I'm glad I did. A lot of personal growth and professional growth came of this great opportunity. So I'm pleased that we got that opportunity over 10 years ago, and then have helped the center and the PCADV grow the program throughout the county and even statewide.
Well, that is a great transition, Lieutenant Ollis, because my next question for y'all is, how has LAP changed and grown in your county over the last decade? Dr. Wideman-Scott, if you want to go first.
Sure. It has changed significantly that we have had the wonderful opportunity to train and retrain law enforcement about the implementation of LAP. And along with that comes the calls to our hotline when they are on the scene and identify that there is an incident of domestic violence and that the survivor would benefit from speaking with our hotline counselor. And so the hotline counselors are always available 24/7, and the phone is answered by an individual, a live person, not a recording, etc. And they will quickly inform the survivor, the victim, that it is not their fault. Services are available, and they are welcome to come to our shelter, they and their children, and we will continue providing them with information and services that they can make decisions about what they are interested in doing in terms of their safety and security. And we really do help them along the way. And as an organization, we are really extremely fortunate that we have multiple programs. We have our emergency shelter, we have long-term housing, we have staff attorneys who help individuals as they navigate through the criminal justice system. We provide trauma-informed counseling for the victim and their children. And we also have other services such as assisting the children with homework and really engaging them in learning more about financial security, etc. So as an organization, we continue to increase our services and work with the families to let them know that they're not alone, it's not their fault, and that we do have a lot of services that are available so that they could continue to enhance their safety and their needs. We meet the needs of the survivor, the victim, where they're at. And as an organization, we are just extremely supportive. We have many, many partners in the community who are also extremely supportive. So we're just grateful that over the 10 years, we have been able to provide multiple trainings for law enforcement and have engaged the prosecution in that process as well.
Thank you so much, Dolly. Lieutenant Ollis, do you have anything to add to that about the growth in Chester County?
Yeah, first I have to comment on the homework help that the counselors do at the center with participants, children. I'm glad I'm not called in. I got kids. I'm no good at fourth grade math. So Dolly, well done getting that taken care of. Just to grow, it's been extraordinary. It started with 2 departments, and it has grown that to a point where nearly every police department in Chester County utilizes LAP. And I think about, lines in the map, and we have 5 police departments all within 5 miles of our headquarters here. People travel. So if we all speak the same language and can all provide this assessment, it makes good sense. And for nearly every department to utilize LAP in this county is amazing. And it's a testament to the hard work of Dolly and Ashley and everybody at the center. And it would surely be remarkable if it spread like that in every county. And I have a willingness to help. So feel free to call if you need me.
I love that. And we agree. We would love to see it spread. I think right now the number is about just around 1/3 of all of the law enforcement departments across the state are participating. If I calculated that correctly. So we have a great amount of participation, but we'd love to see more. You heard it straight from Lieutenant Ollis. He'd love to help more departments get involved. So if you are part of a law enforcement department in your community, or if you have connections with one and anyone's interested in getting involved, you can reach out to PCADV and we can get you connected with your local program and with someone like Lieutenant Ollis and get the ball rolling on that. My next question is for Ashley. I'd love for you to talk a little bit about the impact that you've seen on the domestic violence program side, both in how survivors have been impacted and also about the impact that you've seen for advocates at the program.
Absolutely. So when I stepped into my current position as the LAP coordinator, I noticed that there's like a really strong partnership between law enforcement and the staff within the Domestic Violence Center of Chester County. When working with law enforcement, I've seen them become more compassionate and at times go above and beyond to support victims. Officers in our county have supported with transportation to get identified victims to our emergency shelter. At one point, we had an officer who drove from the very lower part of our county to support getting an identified victim to the courthouse to file a protection order, and then continue to stay in contact with that victim to support with transportation to that next location. And then one of our police departments has stepped up a little bit and is supporting with emergency protection order by using video conferencing software for on-call judges after hours. So that all impacts our survivors and that support and that empowerment that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. So then we also see an impact for survivors that there's now an increased trust in law enforcement that they're going to take action, they're going to support, and then getting, again, connected with our agency and getting counseling and support with processing their trauma through our trauma-informed counseling services and the children's therapy and getting support with emergency housing so they have a safe location And then through our relocation programs and our protection from abuse orders, which our attorneys and legal advocates support with, and getting connected with the community resources throughout the county so that they aren't just confined to leaning on our agency, that there's a huge entire community that has resources for them. So it is through the LAP program, it's providing survivors with that fast track to safety planning, to empowerment and support. I've been in this role for about 4 years. And I've seen a lot of names come across my desk, and I follow up with counselors frequently and check in on the survivors to see how things are going, and to check in to see if there's any barriers that they're facing. Was there anything that they have questions about in regards to that lab process that they had went through? And it's through those check-ins that we're able to address any barriers that may have popped up, or any concerns. And that leaves the door open for conversation, to see what we can do to either address that barrier or provide that individual with extra support. It's also through the check-ins that our partnerships with law enforcement and agency advocates, we've been able to increase the numbers of individuals continuing with counseling services and the number of screens being sent into the agency. So since the 18-19 fiscal year to the 21-22 fiscal year, we've actually seen an 18% increase in screens being submitted to our agency. And then in 18-19, we saw a 43% of high danger screens continuing with services. And then this past fiscal year, 21-22, we actually saw an 85% increase in high danger individuals continuing with services through our agency. So the LAP program is definitely advancing, and our advocates are getting the support through law enforcement and the community through this program to address the needs of these identified victims so that we can help them become survivors. And it's just, I think it's making for that extra support that the survivor and the advocates need to get everyone moving in the right direction.
That is so incredible. And those statistics about the number of high-risk survivors that are continuing with services is just awesome. That's so great to hear. Thank you for sharing all of that with us, Ashley. And on the in the line of those statistics, Dr. Wideman-Scott, are there any particular statistics or maybe a particular instance that stands out to you from the last 10 years when you think about the LAP program and what it's done in your community?
I really can commend the Domestic Violence Center and law enforcement for continuing with the implementation of LAP during the past 10 years. In the beginning, it was really a vision. It was something that we wanted to see for ourselves if this is an effective program. And we were really successful in making that determination that earlier on, we did not have staff specifically to be responsible for the data, to be responsible for working specifically with individuals who were who have been referred to us by law enforcement, that our hotline advocates have always been available, but now we have been able to get funding specifically to have from no staff to 1.5, one full-time and one part-time staff positions to really focus on the LAP program. In the beginning, it was really myself and administrative staff who were collecting the data, who were responsible for connecting the survivors with staff so that they can continue to do the follow-up and reporting to PCADV. And so it's just been really, really amazing. And when we were successful in getting funding for the first position, we quickly, shortly thereafter, have been successful in getting funding for the part-time position. And those positions are needed because we want to make sure that we are doing our part in collecting and connecting with law enforcement, and doing our part in connecting back with survivors, finding out the resources that they need. We also have reached out and connected with a foundation because we heard from a lot of the survivors that sometimes when there is an incident of domestic violence, that their phone is broken and they have no access to communication. And so we have been able to secure funding that we don't have an endless supply, but we do have a supply of phones that we are able to provide to survivors when there is a need so that they can stay connected with ourselves, law enforcement, and also just use the phone for other resources that we provide the phone, and the phone has prepaid minutes, etc. So again, we are continuing to add on resources that can help survivors when they need to make that call when they are in a domestic violence situation. So in 10 years, we've really come a long way and have had that determination that we are going to continue. We have not stopped. So again, I always say, wow, 10 years, we have not stopped, that we have ensured that we are available for survivors. We have ensured that we are available to connect with law enforcement. And that does make a significant difference in order to make the program successful and to demonstrate its effectiveness.
Thanks so much, Dolly. Lieutenant Ollis, anything from your perspective that particularly stands out to you from the past 10 years of the LAP program?
Well, the 85% that Ashley spoke about is pretty remarkable, right? You can have all the info in the world, unless you do something with it, you're no different, right? So that's amazing to me because it's moving people from victimized to empowered. And I dig that, right? But the stat that I'm proud of is I work in a department with about 30 sworn officers, and 100% of them, they're in, they understand the mission, they appreciate what Dolly and her team, what they're doing, but they truly care. But they're smart enough to know that they can't solve everything. You need help. And that connection to the counselors and the advocates at the Domestic Violence Center through a phone call after learning about the victim situation, it's a game changer. I've said it before. It's just that quick connection when called for makes all the difference in the world, and it makes our jobs easier.
That's great. Ashley, how has participation in LAP impacted the relationship between police departments and your domestic violence program since the implementation?
So I think we've seen a change in our partnership. So I've been in this role for 4 years, and I've seen a significant change. When I first started, the departments didn't really know who I was. So I drove around our county and I introduced myself and talked to a lot of individuals, and then through trainings, they got more comfortable with seeing my face and my name. And there are times I will get an email. It is not a lap screen. It is not a question about submitting a lap screen. It's just questions on how they can do better to support someone who's experienced trauma. So even before getting to that lap screen. So it's no longer just okay, this is a program that the county is utilizing through this agency, and we're going to fill out this form and we're going to scan it. I don't know, it's become like a friendship and like a family of the two organizations coming together to address one main need, which is supporting victims of violence. So when I first started, I would be like, I got to call the chief at this department. And now it's, I got to call the chief. Okay. And it's very rewarding to see the relationships grow and change and shift. And our advocates are, anytime there's an issue, whether it's super small or something that a identified victim expressed major concern over, it's, hey, this is what happened, this is what I was told. And when I call the officers and address these things, it's always met with an open mind and, hey, let's problem solve this, let's talk about it, let's see how we can do better. And it makes a difference for that next victim that officer is responding to. Those little conversations make such a big difference to kind of change the mindset and the response to identified victims. So I'm very happy to say that our county has seen a very positive shift in our partnership, and it's been mostly of growth.
Wonderful. Lieutenant Ollis, what about from your perspective? How have you seen the relationship change over the past 10 years since LAP's been implemented?
Well, that's a tough question. I can only speak for my department, but it's actually grown into, like, the collateral damage, so to speak, is now we're doing so much more. Domestic Violence Awareness Month. We're painting our pumpkins purple. We're putting ribbons on the cars. We're painting the town purple, so to speak, in the business district. And we're doing quite a bit with employees and volunteers of the Domestic Violence Center, and having a good time raising awareness, doing some things that we might not have done in previous years because we didn't have that FaceTime or that important problem-solving time with an advocate. It was just a building in a part of the county more than 10 years ago. It's turned into caring and capable people that work in a building that provide invaluable services to victim survivors. So not a lot of people really love change, right? This was change, and this added a few extra minutes to each call if it fell in line with the LAP guidelines. It was another piece of paper. It was another way to document something, but now it's normal. And now if there is a domestic disturbance call, in the back of our minds going to the call, is this a LAP protocol? So now it's just changed what's normal in a constructive, positive, life-saving way.
That's great. Thank you so much for that. So while PCADV would love for every law enforcement agency in the state to participate in LAP, we do believe it's essential to keep participation voluntary because both law enforcement and other community buy-in are really a key to the program's success. So Lieutenant Ollis, can you tell us a little bit about what it was like, which you just kind of touched on a little bit, but what it was like initially implementing LAP in your department and in other departments that you've helped to train, and how officer and community buy-in impact the implementation and success of the LAP program?
Well, I mentioned just a couple minutes ago change is difficult. You do it a certain way for a number of years, and then you got to do something different, right? But it wasn't a hard sell because, one, it's easy. Two, it helps forge relationships. Three, I think many in my field get into it to help people and save lives and resolve significant issues, right? It's part of what we do and why we love doing it. But if you're someone that doesn't want to go back to that house, chances are if you utilize lethality assessment program questionnaire and it's high risk and you connect them to an advocate, more times than not, you're not going to have to go back because they've connected to services or they've left that dangerous situation. So there's a lot of reasons why it's been beneficial. If you look at stats, it reduces the potential for intimate partner homicide. But really, you're accomplishing what you're set out to do when you take your oath. And it can reduce call volume into that one particular home when connection to services are made. So it wasn't a hard sell. It really wasn't. And again, now it's what everybody's doing. So just part of the regular field training officer program.
I think that's wonderful that it's become such an ingrained part of the law enforcement community in your county that it's now just like, this is how things are, and we do it this way, and we know, that this is part of the protocol, and that we know that this is going to help connect victims to services, and we know that connecting victims to services is really, a great way to make their lives better and help them get the support that they need to be empowered to build a life free from abuse. So I think that's wonderful to hear. And you did just touch on this here, but Lieutenant Ellis, is there anything else that you would add to say to other law enforcement agencies that might be considering implementing LAP in their own community?
Simply stated, do it. It's easy, it's impactful, and it saves lives.
I love it. Short, simple, just do it. Dr. Wideman-Scott, do you have any final thoughts on the LAP program and how it has affected your program and how it's changed things over the past 10 years? Any final parting thoughts for us?
It's an essential support for survivors in every county. So again, I would say that for all police departments and domestic violence programs, yes, partner together because it is effective and we can definitely provide the information about our success. And also in terms of that, I was just thinking that one of the initiatives that Domestic Violence Center has done for many years is that we provide all of the police chiefs with a quarterly report on the LAP program. It lists all of the police departments who have provided screens and how many have called our hotline and the number of victims that have accessed our services. And in addition to that, PCADV has its dashboard that has information that is really similar to that. When PCADV introduced its dashboard, I recall writing a letter to the chief saying that since PCADV has its LAP dashboard, we will no longer send them quarterly reports. And oh my goodness, did I have a field day with chiefs calling me saying, oh no, Dolly, Domestic Violence Center, you have to continue sending us those quarterly reports. They're really important to us. We need our reports. And there's a couple of departments, and Ashley, I'm thinking about it, we need to send a report out for the first quarter of this fiscal year that call us and say, where's our report? Isn't it time for our quarterly report? So again, there's a great interest, and they really do appreciate looking at the reports, having conversations about what can we do differently, what can we do better, connecting with Ashley to say, okay, on the report we had, for example, 10 screens, but we know that we had 20 calls. What happened? And Ashley would basically respond by saying, well, we only report what we receive. So yeah, it's a really, really effective program. And again, data is so important for everyone. And I'm really glad that we started providing that data because it also helps us to see how we're doing in terms of the connection with survivors who we get calls from.
That's great, Dolly. And that dashboard, there's a link to that dashboard in the comments. So that's actually open. Anybody can go in and check out the dashboard and see what's happening in your own community, see what departments in your county are participating, and see how that program is progressing. So feel free to check out that link and take a look at the dashboard. And then Ashley, do you have any final parting thoughts for us? I'm sorry, on the LAP program.
No, you're fine. So I'm just going to build a little bit on what Dolly was talking about with our quarterly reports. Our departments also love annual reports, and their fiscal year runs calendar where ours does not. So every December, I actually do 2 annual reports a year. I do one for us and I do one for them. So I think our departments really like to look back on how they've done over the year. I know a lot of them want them on our official letterhead because they go ahead and make it a data file and embed it into their annual reports to kind of show their communities what they are doing to connect with agency resources and things within their community. So it started out, I always say, as a baby for Dolly. It was definitely one of her passion projects that she brought into our agency. And now I feel like it's everybody's baby at this point. So I'm very, very cautious of it and take very good care of it, but I couldn't take as good care of it if I didn't have the support of our law enforcement community. So it's now everybody's baby at this point.
That's so wonderful. Thank you, all 3 of you, for taking the time out of your very busy days to join us and talk about this. Being the 10-year anniversary, we felt it was really important to shine a little light on this program because these partnerships, these relationships are really important. And I think you all have done a great job today of explaining the kind of impact that these types of relationships between law enforcement and domestic violence service providers can have for survivors and for the community as a whole. So at PCADV, we may be running the dashboard, but we really appreciate all of the very hard work that you all are doing and all of the other participating programs across the state, across the Commonwealth are doing to actually implement the LAP program. So thank you for being such a wonderful example of what we can accomplish together. And have a great day. We wish you all the best, and thanks again.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye, everyone.
Yeah.